Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the July 7th meeting of the Capital Improvement Program Committee. We'll begin with our introductions as we normally do. John?
I'm Jonathan North, the Planning and Zoning Administrator.
I'm Christy Curtis, School Board Member.
Gayla Bruck, Community Member.
Tim Redmond, Planning Board Member and Chairman.
Earl Carroll, Community Member and Vice Chair.
Ray Labor, Community Rep.
Peter Georgantis, Board of Selectmen Rep.
Mike Smith, Budget Committee Rep.
Thank you, everyone. Tonight's subject for this meeting would normally be callbacks for any department heads we had questions for, and we begin our deliberative workshop to begin discussing how the committee will handle the requests from the department heads. First order of business tonight are some minutes that were postponed from our last meeting. They are the minutes of June the 16th, am I correct?
Yes.
Okay. Mike wanted to withhold the vote so he could have a chance to read them.
Thank you for that.
So does anybody have any
That is
comments on the minutes of June the 16th?
Motion to approve the minutes as we have them.
Second.
Been
I have
moved-
just one, I'm sorry. There's just
Okay,
one
that's fine.
tiny
Been
edit.
moved and seconded. Discussion. Christie?
Just my name is spelled wrong in the,
Okay, instead of a C.
yeah.
Yeah.
in
I
the-
corrected it in future.
I saw it in the next, thank you.
Does anybody else have any other corrections or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor of the minutes as corrected, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? The minutes of June the 16th pass unanimously. Second set of minutes is from the June 30th meeting, our last meeting. They were on the table tonight. Once again, most of us get them online as well from Patty Gale, so there is an opportunity to read them at home, should you have an email account. Anybody have any questions or comments?
Move them for discussion.
They've been moved for discussion.
All right. I do have a couple of things when I read them. I think most of these are typos, but we'll go through them anyway.
Before you begin, Earl.
Yes.
Ray, did you have something since you made the motion for discussion?
Just a couple of observations, one on page 1, the second on page 2.
Could you try to
Under
get it?
Sewer Commission,
Yes?
probably midway down, reclamation cost is getting higher, and we are mandated by the CPA. I believe that's EPA.
I would believe that's correct. The Environmental Protection Agency.
Right.
Everybody got that one? EPA and DES. It says on the right side of the first large paragraph under Sewer Commission. Did you find it, Gil?
Yep.
Okay.
Well,
Ray, did you have a second one?
Page 2, fifth paragraph from the bottom,
How many?
the fifth line up from the bottom.
Will you begin with your name?
Where it begins with me. Ray Labor asked if there were issues which purchasing new versus new vehicles. Used should be one of the descriptors.
Which one is the one you want to be put in for first or second, Ray?
Say used for the first one, please.
Used versus new.
Right.
So corrected. Anything else,
That's all
Ray?
I have, thank you.
All right, Earl?
In the first full Public Works paragraph,
What page are you on?
I'm on page 2.
Okay.
The third line up from the bottom of that, we are proposing used one to save. I think that probably should be save, S-A-V-E.
Save costs? So noted.
And I think I have one more. Yep. Page 5. Cemetery trustees, the large paragraph in the middle, first line at the end. You have heating, and I imagine it should, electrical, and I imagine it's heating costs rather than hearing costs,
Where are you?
right
Yes.
there.
He-
I think that probably should be heating.
Yep.
We do have to hear, though.
This is, why?
What did he say?
So I can listen to you. Anything else, Earl?
That is all that I've got.
Anybody else have any other notations or corrections in the minutes? Okay, do I hear a motion? They've only been moved for discussion at this point.
Okay, motion to accept as amended.
Second.
Motion to accept is amended by Ray, seconded by Earl. Any other discussion? All those in favor of accepting the minutes as amended, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Me.
We have 2 abstentions. And the chair votes in favor, so it's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to 2, is that correct?
Yes.
502.
5, 2, 0.
502.
502. 502. 2 abstentions. Okay, thank you. All right, so did anyone have any request for a callback or information that was relayed to John as requested at our last meeting? Anybody need anything else from any of the department heads? Okay, so we do not have any callback information.
Yeah.
Thank you, John. So the first order of business is to begin reviewing the matrix. We have a new working copy in front of us tonight
That is correct.
with the corrections from our prior meetings. Normally, we begin with the town vehicles, and we go through them as by department. Tonight, I'd like to look at the vehicle matrix and look at the priorities that are requested by the department. We have the option to move a vehicle out in the matrix if we see fit. We also have an option to change the priority if we think that it's not as, we don't agree with the department head. So this year, 17 proposed CIP. The police departments is the first section. We have 3 patrol vehicles being requested, and they are rated Department Priority 2, Department Priority 3, and Department Priority 2. Anybody have any comments or questions about?
I guess why would we have 2 of them as a 2 and 1 as a 3? Other than the fact that because the mileage is pretty similar on all of them.
We don't really have a good working definition of our priorities, which we should have for our next year's meeting.
Again, maybe that's something that the planning board,
I will work with the planning board in that
Because you
direction.
brought that up last year.
Yes, I did. So at this point, I think we're going to have to use our own discretion if we decide we want to do anything with these requests from the department heads and the priorities. Now, the priority 1 being urgent is I'm going to try to find a copy of one of our submission forms. Yeah, Class 1 is urgent, 2 is necessary, 3 is desirable, and 4 is deferrable. So I feel at the very least, they should all be necessary. The chief has put 1 in as a desirable. I think that in past years, the police department has always requested 3 vehicles on a rotation basis. They do go to Public Works, the building department, sewer department. Everybody benefits from these vehicles being handed down, Parks Department. So, anybody have any comments on the priorities or the vehicles?
go ahead, Ray.
Yeah, I know we're looking at 2017 only, but if we take a look at the police department requests for vehicles in 2020 and 2021, we have a series of them that are rated as 1 urgent. Are we addressing the entire matrix tonight, or do we want to just focus on 2017? at
We
this
address the matrix as a whole in terms of the request. We only address the priority for the year that we're working in. We
Sure.
don't address priorities in the out years,
Fine.
or we haven't in the past anyway. Correct, Earl?
Yes.
Okay.
Although, speaking of out years, I do note that in 2022, we show a bottom line of $139,000,
Without any-
but no entries.
Yeah. So for our final matrix, John, could you please check with Chief Brown and get the numbers put into the matrix for those years
I will.
that would reflect his desires? Is it in his CIP pamphlet that we received, Earl?
On the worksheet, he shows 139,019 for 2022, but I don't No, there's nothing for the
So could you,
others here.
I would request that the police department provide us with some estimates for the vehicles with their escalation and inflation costs for the year '22,
I will do that.
just so he can justify his number that's at the bottom of the column, as noted by Earl. Thank you.
And we also asked for some clarification for timing on lines, the vehicles on lines 11 and 12. Both of them are blank.
Yeah, there are 2010 in there, and another 2010, so.
So I'm going to jump to the conclusion that those, well,
Yeah, because they're looking to replace 11s in 2021,
yeah,
and 8 and 2 11s. So I think just to clean up the matrix, John, if you could have the police chief assign slots for lines 11 and 12 as noted.
my guess is that that's going to be the 2022.
Well,
Again, who knows?
well, I would expect he'd replace 10s before he'd replace 11s. Would you expect that
Yes,
to be?
I would.
So that's a little housekeeping, John, for
Absolutely.
our presentation to the planning board.
No problem.
So let's go back to the year 2017. Does anybody have any issue with the police department asking for 3 vehicles in the same year as we have seen in the past?
No, I think it makes perfect sense. You know, that's how we've done it for years, and it makes perfect sense to
Continue.
continue that way, because that way the fleet doesn't get totally out of control.
And should we look at line 13 and change the department priority to a 2 so that all the priorities are 2s right down through?
Yeah.
Anybody disagree with that?
None at all.
Okay, so that will change line 13. The priority will change to a 2, John.
Got it.
Any other discussion on the police department vehicle request portion of the matrix? I'll wait for Peter because he's looking at some other sheets right now.
No, I'm just look at it, I'm good. I was just trying to track down the 15,000 for the Ford Ranger, but I can figure that out later.
Ford Ranger,
Yeah,
And
line
19.
18.
that's an ACO vehicle.
That seems a little light.
Probably looking at a used vehicle because the ACO does not run all the time. You know, it's an as-needed position.
Yeah.
So it's entirely possible he would be looking for a used vehicle for the ACO. But you can also,
I can figure it out, I'll find out from him.
all right, or John could ask as part of his total package that he's asking questions about.
There
gonna
should be
circle
something in
that.
here, right?
And I'm going to circle these 2 10s and find out what's happening to these 2 10s. And then the whole line, 22, is a question mark. All right, let's move on to the fire department. Begins on line 23. The engine 1 that's been requested in 2017 was an engine that this committee moved out that was requested last year. The reasoning, as I remember it, was if the capital reserve fund was funded, it could be nearly paid for as a standalone cash item. I'm sure it's going to be some tax money involved, but that was our thought. And if you look at the matrix moving out, the chief is going another 4 years before he asks for another engine, and that is in 2021. So they're spaced pretty well, and should the capital reserve fund remain a funded item by the taxpayers, then that engine come 2021 could be nearly funded by the capital reserve fund. Is that correct?
Correct, yeah. Because right now in the fire apparatus capital reserve, and I put this in the minutes a couple of meetings ago,
The amount?
the amount.
Well, does it show in our,
It shows in the,
doesn't show what the total
it was,
is, does it?
I
Yeah.
thought it was like 275
it
this year.
does. In the June 2nd minutes, it shows that the fire department, which includes the May 2nd deposit, has $568,716 in the capital reserve fund.
So they're about 70,000 short right now.
Yeah.
So we would be looking at a $70,000 tax impact,
which is, in the grand scheme of things, minimal.
which is negligible compared to the overall number.
Yeah, I think, however, in
And then if
the,
possible, he might get a better deal than the 640, so it could reduce the tax amount if he
Correct.
able to purchase an
yeah,
engine.
and John's got that in the capital reserve, offsetting revenue on line 44 on page 2. He's got the 568,000.
Yes, I see it. Okay, so it showed up. Ray?
But should not the funding source under the expense indicate both capital reserve and a tax appropriation?
Yeah,
Yeah, I think that needs to be corrected, John. Funding source for line 24 should reflect tax appropriation and capital reserve savings, or capital reserve fund, however you want to term it, which is line 44.
and probably by the time they actually take delivery of this vehicle, or, even with, just with interest and other, accrued savings, it's probably gonna be close to 600,000.
Peter?
I may be wrong, but I thought, and I haven't talked to the chief, but I was under the impression the capital reserve continues on at 225, so that money would still come out of the capital reserve if this passes.
If
Our-
it passes.
Our capital reserve fund is an annual article, correct?
Right.
So it has to be passed in.
I understand that, but then you would have, if you come out of that 225 again, you would continue
Right,
on.
we wouldn't have the $70,000 tax impact.
It would come out
But
of that
I think at least for our purposes now, we've got to show that, because we don't know
That's
what's
fine,
going to
no,
happen
but
in March.
I thought that the intent was,
Well,
because that's 225 is in here, and the capital reserve continuing on, so.
Correct.
And then, and if that should pass, which more than likely it will, as it has been, then that, I imagine they would use that come out of that 70 would come out of that.
But the article would be written that it was capital reserve funds plus the difference would be a tax appropriation, because the capital reserve fund is a separate article. You can't count on one passing.
Right, for our purposes, we've got to show the $70,000 tax impact.
That's right.
Okay. Okay, and then you move down, he's looking for a boat and a trailer for 20,000 below that, line 26. So if I'm not mistaken, there's only 2 requests from the fire department in 17, is that correct, Earl?
Yes,
He put a priority 1 on the engine, which I agree with, but I don't necessarily agree with a 2 on the boat. I think that's more of a desirable than a necessary. Does anybody have any more information on that?
it's too bad that somebody like Mark isn't here instead of Peter, because we might have a better handle on exactly the condition of that boat.
I'm going to flip to the fire
I
department.
haven't heard any issues with it at all, if that makes any difference to you, I mean, but I know that it has been used recently, as we know, last year on the river, we had
Right.
issues, and
This is true.
I'm trying to find it in his submission sheets.
It's,
I got it.
it was,
How far
says
back is it?
it's an aging 2002 boat requiring regular repair in order to maintain its ready status. The 20,000 includes boat motor and trailer.
Well, I'd like to flag that, to look at it again, because if you go back to the capital projects, the fire department's asking for a lot of other capital project numbers in here. Unless these are in out years, and I'm not. They probably are out year submissions. Well, can we just flag that for now and come back to it if we feel that we would like to do something with that?
Yeah.
I'm just gonna circle this 26 to come back to it.
Here it says 2003, and on the submission sheet, it says 2002.
I won't-
I'm not gonna
That could be
pick
a
at that.
typo.
It's one or the other.
So if this committee agrees, I'd like to continue with the matrix. I've circled 26 to come back and talk about 26.
That's fine. I'd like to ask for timing on line 25 again. It's another blank line.
Oh, there, 25, in the memo column, it says replacement in 2027. But that doesn't make sense. They're not gonna go 22 years on an ambulance.
Well, look at line 34. They've got a 2009, they said they're going to replace it in 2033.
2020, he's got it.
Well, then,
And then again in 23 and 34.
Can we just ask the chief to see if that's something that should be
cleaned up.
Sure.
Yeah.
I can do that.
'Cause
What line was that, Ray?
25?
25?
So line 25 needs to be checked for why it's empty.
Yeah, because he's got, it looks like he's got these on roughly a 9-year replacement, which would put this 05 would be,
This may, John may find this in his capital improvement program book. It's in our submission, which I really don't want to look through tonight.
Okay.
I'd soon let the chief handle it, or have you take a look at it later, and then you can clean it up for us later.
No problem.
Thank you. Anybody have any other pressing items here?
I don't see where the ambulance is showing that we replaced it this year, and I thought we replaced one last year, or this year.
I
I'm
thought
just wondering if that may be the one.
I wonder if that's the one that got replaced in it.
we got ambulance, we got one on
Well, ambulance 3,
29,
ambulance 1,
34.
ambulance 2. So do we have two 2009 GMCs? Because line 29 and line 34 are both 2009 GMCs. Is that a typo?
They have different mileages on them.
Yeah, a lot different mileages on
And if I,
And one's
We just-
TBD for
them. We just did a new ambulance.
didn't we do one a couple of years ago when it was involved in, was one of them involved in an accident or something? I'm trying to remember.
Well, this one they're talking about, that Ray has the blank line, that's the one we kept because they used it for transport and it wasn't for first line duty. They kept it for the transport use,
Correct.
for the revenue side of it.
We gotta check into it.
Doesn't have that many hours, but it's got a lot of mileage.
Because an
Well, I can
ambulance,
tell you, they're doing a different program now, where we'll be able to replace just the chassis instead of the whole thing,
right.
so.
Yeah, he did explain
Well,
that.
we do have a submission sheet for the ambulance for 18, but that's all we have. It's in our packet.
So, yeah, if somebody could check with Chief O'Brien regarding line 25. And we also,
Maybe they have no intention of doing anything with it in the near future, so why don't we just leave it alone, let the chief
All right,
explain it
yeah.
to John.
It's just an observation, if indeed there is nothing planned within the specific time period of this matrix, I wonder why we carry the lines forward and whether they shouldn't just be deleted.
Well, because it's in service right now, Ray.
I'm looking at, work your way down, there's stuff that's out there for 2034. If indeed we're not doing anything until that point, why carry it on this matrix?
No, we have to list all the vehicles on the matrix, that's a
You
requirement.
do?
Every
Okay.
piece of rolling stock has to be on the matrix, even if there's nothing happening within the next 10 years.
Adds confusion as we go through the
Well,
matrix.
the problem is,
Yeah.
that when it pops up 2 years from now, you say, well, where the heck did that come from? It's always been there. It's part of the assets. They're called
Fine.
fixed assets,
I
right?
can understand, thank you.
Okay,
looking back at the boats, he's got the boats on a 14-year replacement, both of them. Line 26 goes out 14 years, it's a 2003. It goes out to 2017. And line 30 is a 2006.
Well.
14 years goes out to 2020.
well, I'd like to review
That's
that.
not old, but 2003s and 2000 boats, so that's not old for a boat.
No, it's not.
I mean, there's a lot of old boats out there.
Yeah, I guess it depends on what it is and what kind of use it gets.
That's not for us to discuss tonight. Anybody want to talk about the priorities? We only have two submissions for this year, so we'll come back. to the boat, and we can talk about the boat. when we-
I think, line 24, engine 1 is a legitimate one.
Absolutely. I'd like to go through the capital requests before we decide on the vote, if that's all right with the committee. All right, so let's move on to the next. We have,
Tim, before you move,
yeah, go
I'm
ahead,
trying
Mike.
to- no, I'm good with the priorities and the requests. I'm trying to get a better understanding of the revenue side of this and the way that's put together.
On what line?
45,
25?
45,
45? Yep, that's the next section.
48, and 49. Yeah, I'm trying to do the math here, and I guess we have a capital reserve coming in of 568, and we've got a request for 660, which is where you get the 92 from. And then the 225 is an annual request, but if we get the annual request, we're not gonna be needing the 92, are we?
Right, and it would be, and again, he's got 640, 640 and,
The reason for that, Mike, is that if the article for the engine fails and the capital reserve money passes, this capital reserve money goes into the fund. If the article for the engine passes and you're relying on the capital reserve fund to fund the balance of it and the article fails, then the engine fails.
I understand.
So you have to show where the source of funding is. Then it would be up to the Board of Selectmen and the fire department chief to decide, okay, we're not going to use the tax appropriation, we won't ask for that, we'll use some of our capital reserve funds should both articles pass, Mike.
also math-wise, it should be 72, not 92.
John can check that.
Okay.
You understand what I'm saying, Mike?
I do. I understand that you're depending on that 225 for 2017 to fill the void, and if that fails, and you still want to buy the fire engine, you got.
No, we're not actually counting on the 225 to fill any voids. We're counting on what we have in the capital reserve fund as an offsetting revenue, and the difference being a tax appropriation for the engine.
Got it.
If the capital reserve fund request also passes, then it becomes a board decision with the fire department whether we actually use the appropriation that was requested, or we use the capital reserve funds. They could decide to use both. They could decide to use a tax appropriation methodology so that 225 in its full goes into the capital reserve fund, which is a savings account for the next engine we have to purchase. You know, it's not a bad plan to have 7/8 of the money in the bank and the taxpayers fork over at 1/8 of the cost.
It's a good plan. I absolutely agree. I'm just
They're one
trying
of the
to-
few departments that actually have a successful capital reserve fund going.
On line 45, the 92,000, the chief actually has 92,000 documented in his spreadsheet. So
Well,
should I?
I think you should look at the difference between the request at 640 and the funds on deposit at 568.
I think
and
he's
the
probably
difference-
including the 20,000 for the boat in there. That's probably the difference between the
Yeah, that could
72
be
and
it.
92.
Yeah, that is the difference.
Okay.
Should I leave it as 92 then?
Yeah, we might
Yeah.
change that before the end of the meeting.
Okay.
Thank you for noticing that, Mike.
That's right, Mike, you're absolutely correct.
See, Mike's on the budget committee, he sees this stuff.
He's just trying to understand, that's all.
All right, and then then if everything gets deducted, there'll be a $350 balance in the capital reserve fund moving forward. That $350 is added to the $225 if it's appropriated by the voters. Any other questions on fire at this point? We will be coming back through, so if you have a question about something, just circle the number and we'll come back to it. Okay. The next list is the Public Works Department. For 2017, they've requested 4 items that I can see. Yes? 2 plow trucks, a Bobcat used, and a crew cab dump truck, a new crew cab dump truck. I did question the Public Works Department at a prior meeting, and these vehicles will not be retained by the department and added to the fleet. They will be traded or auctioned at the word of the Public Works Department. So, Adam explained to us at the last meeting that he has a schedule for the vehicles over the next 7 or 8 years, and he's trying to keep the number the same. If you go to the bottom line, 106, you notice that he has tried to keep the number fairly close all the way through without any large spikes, and create a replacement schedule for these vehicles. I don't disagree with that. Selectman Georgianis,
Go ahead.
if one of these two Freightliner dump trucks, let's say both of them are approved for an expenditure,
Mhm.
I would hope that the trucks would be traded against them to try to lower the cost of the capital expense and not necessarily put the trade auction values back into the general fund. Is that appropriate or inappropriate in your opinion?
We're gonna do whatever we can do to get the most for those vehicles.
Right.
So if it, at the time, you know, Adam will research and we'll find out, or somebody at DPW will research and find out what a used truck is going for and what the trade-in value is.
I think what Tim's comment was, Peter, is he would like to see Public Works money, trade-in value, auction, whatever, stay with the Public Works budget as opposed to going into the general fund.
I don't want to put it into the general budget.
That's what I'm saying.
I'd like to see,
Public Works
if we're
stays-
talking about a $175,000 plow truck, and they're gonna get, say, $20,000 on a trade value, I'd like to see the tax appropriation be $155,000. That's what I'd like to see.
I know.
As opposed to,
That'd be a great thing if,
as opposed to appropriating $175,000 at town meeting, putting $175,000 into the vehicle expense account, and then when it gets traded, now there's $20,000 lingering in the vehicle expense account, which we've seen that happen in the past. So this is just something for the select board to consider. This is not a CIP.
I understand what you're trying to say. The problem is we're having with trucks is, Tim, you may have experienced with your past job, that you can order a truck in April and not see it until
The following April.
the following April.
Happened
So
to me.
there is, your trade-in value, you're not gonna know what that is a year in advance. It's just not gonna happen. How much snow are we gonna, how much are we gonna use that truck? What kind of condition is it
I
gonna
agree.
be at the time?
I
So we kinda have to, we can't say, yeah, that's what we're gonna do, because we don't know, and we're not gonna know that value at the time of appropriation.
Because what you're saying is you're not going to release the vehicle until the new one is there to.
Oh, no, we need those vehicles to
Right.
to keep the roads going, so.
So I would just like you to, as a select board, to discuss the funding mechanism and how we would appropriate the amount we need for the vehicle, but not pile a lot of money into the vehicle equipment fund that just sits there and it goes unused until, one day we need a road widener or something, and, well, there's money in the capital reserve fund, let's just take it out and buy one. That's what I'm trying to avoid.
Okay. We don't have a capital reserve fund for that stuff, though.
Well, when this money is appropriated, it goes into some account somewhere, right? The tax
So it's
dollars.
not a capital reserve.
Okay.
Capital reserve has to be voted on by the voters. We can't establish a capital reserve.
How about a truck and equipment fund then? Goes into the
We
truck
could-
and equipment
Yeah,
fund.
we could say it could go into a truck and equipment fund, but I'm just saying it's not a capital reserve, because that has to be voted on by the voters.
Okay. Does anyone have any comments on the request, the four requests, and then the outlying years as the requests are going on through?
I appreciate the work that was done by the DPW head to level load, if you will, the vehicle requirements over the period of the matrix here. I think he did a fine job. I look at the priorities established by the department for the procurements in 2017, and I agree with the way he's got them ranked also.
I agree.
Compared to what we've seen in the past years, this
This is a breath of fresh air. Okay, anything else on the
DPW.
DPW at this point?
I do see, a capital reserve fund line. Is that something that Adam is considering asking for?
I believe Carl asked for capital reserve funding 3 years ago.
It was
think, yeah.
discussed, yeah, we had discussed it at one time. to set up a capital
Right, I
reserve.
remember you talking about it, Tim.
Yeah, I mean, that was something that, people have always asked for, let's set up a capital reserve and put some money in. We've talked about it. Ray, you were on a budget committee, you remember that, we talked about that years ago. Let's put accountants, just check money into it. But we couldn't, if you remember right, Carl had one set up where we were spending so much money this year and also put money into a capital reserve, and in 10 years, you would reap the fruits of that. So it was gonna be very expensive for 10 years, and then it would kick in. So it was gonna take 10 years for that system to
So
work.
are you saying that if we don't have a capital reserve fund at this time, line 108 shouldn't exist, Earl?
No, I mean, I have no problem with it being there. I was just questioning whether or not that is something that is contemplated. If it's
Well,
not.
it was, and it
Yeah,
wasn't- it never
If-
went through.
Yeah, if it's not, if it's not gonna happen, then, yeah, it's one less line we need on the matrix.
But one blank line doesn't hurt us.
True.
Okay, anything else?
Is it this committee's feeling that we should go with a capital reserve fund for DPW vehicles? Or the way this is set up now, it looks like,
I think the way it's set up
Pretty well
now
set.
is much better than what Carl was preparing. I mean, I like Carl. Carl did a good job, but
It's different.
it's different.
yeah, there's different eyes looking at
The
it.
only thing we could suggest, excuse me, Mike, the only thing we could suggest, Peter, is we go back to what I was talking to you about with this appropriation for the vehicles. Let's say we appropriate all the money for all 4 vehicles, and after it's all said and done and the trades are done, the department shows a net $40,000. Maybe we could begin rolling that money into a capital reserve fund, and then over a period of time, it could become something would it be like a little savings account? Mike?
And I would view a capital reserve fund as something where you're trying to smooth things out. Where if fire department buys a big truck every 6 or 7 years, you want to be putting stuff away along the way to keep it smoother. You got a real smooth plan here already, so I guess I wouldn't see a need for a capital reserve fund. I think how you allocate whatever savings you get is that may be helpful, but I think you want to give the select board some wiggle room to deal with all the funds that they're dealing with. I don't know. That's just me.
What are the legalities of a capital reserve fund, Peter? Does it have to be expended by selectmen's decision or town vote?
Town vote.
All right, so maybe we don't want a capital reserve fund right now, because that changes the whole complexity. Yeah, let's leave
I
it.
understand what you're saying, Tim, and I've advocated for that, to going back in towards the trades instead of the general fund. But then, what we're doing with the general fund, you take some monies to offset tax rate on a regular basis too, so.
Okay, so it balances in the end.
Also use it for big snow years or other
Well,
things too,
no,
I
yeah,
imagine,
well,
right?
No, you can't really do it that way, but we
No,
hope to,
I mean,
yeah, an emergency
You have
spending.
emergencies that come up that you need to
Yeah.
move
Should we
funds around.
perhaps ask the DPW head if indeed he would desire something like that, and then to...
A capital reserve fund?
Yeah, and begin to advertise it and
Actually,
explain it.
Ray, I don't think it's our job to ask him. I think it's his job to propose it to us.
Okay.
And Ray, I would advocate against that, only because that's a year-to-year vote.
It goes in front of the voters, even to get it
Every year.
established. yeah.
Right. So that could hurt you if you did that.
All right, anything else on Public Works, 2017 requests? Now, let's move on. We go down to the Parks and Rec, line 111 is where Parks and Rec begin. They're asking for a field tractor in this year. We all heard they borrow the tractor from the school department for years and years and years, and they've shared maintenance on it, and I think personally, I think it's a fair request for them to get their own tractor to cut the fields, and I don't see anything wrong, and I do agree with a priority one. I do believe it is urgent, since the school has been generous to allow us to use theirs all these years. I think it's time we got our own. Anything else?
Good with it?
Members of the committee?
All set with it.
All right. So that wraps up the vehicles. Move on to the capital projects actually begins at the very bottom of page 3 with nothing there. So if you flip to page 4, you'll see that in 17, The police department is asking for $25,000 for a generator at the radio hut at the summit, as well as $107,000 for a parking lot expansion. Those are the two capital projects for the police department in 2017. The police department's memo says the generator, no, there is no note for the generator.
Can I just bring up one thing? I know you
Where are
just
you?
moved from vehicles.
Okay?
Just, if you go to, I think.
What line?
Line 121, we had this discussion earlier,
Total vehicles?
yeah, where it says revenues,
Yes.
885,000. That includes the 225.
Should it be passed? Do you think that's a false number? You think we should adjust that number, Peter?
Well, I'm just saying, it gives you a bottom line request of 381,000. But part of that is going to the capital reserve and not to offset that price.
I
You
believe
understand?
it. I
You
believe
understand
you're
what I'm
right.
saying?
I believe you're right.
It's kind of a smoke and mirrors number, and I shouldn't say it that way, but.
Well,
I was having trouble that was where I was getting
Well,
all mixed up.
when you bring it down to the
We're not
bottom,
gonna have 885,000.
when you bring it down to the bottom line, that 885, that 381,
revenues are really 568,000,
Right.
correct?
right.
That's all the real revenues we have.
That's my understanding of it.
Yeah.
I don't
Bro,
think,
what
I
would
don't,
you-
I wouldn't say that we could count on a warrant article to be counted as a revenue at this point.
Correct. I think that number should be the vehicle revenue which we currently know is available,
Which is 560.
568.
So that number needs to change, John.
I'm thinking,
568.
I don't know, it just,
I agree, Peter. It's a number I bypassed. So,
Well, then that 92,000 is really not a revenue number either, is it?
Well, I guess the question becomes then, do we,
how is that, I don't understand that calculation, I guess. Maybe I need more clarification from somebody.
well, as you go out in the years, Peter, it looks like they're adding the 225 every year as an expansion,
as an extension of revenue?
as an extension of the revenue as they expect they're going to get it passed. And I don't know that you can put, I hope I get this money into the revenue column. I would say that if it passes this year in the 225 request for the
Yeah.
bar?
Yep.
If that passes, then we could show it in the 18 matrix that 225 is there, but plus whatever. I think that whole line needs some work. Line 121 needs some work.
See,
I
if
think
you
you got-
follow this over to 2018, let's go back to 47.
Line 47?
Follow that across. If you look at 2018, he's showing a balance of 225.35. That almost looks like he's expending the 225 from 2017.
No, because if he has a balance of 225,018, he's already used, that's the 17 money that got moved over. That's the money that we got.
No,
from-
because he keeps putting that balance in.
It's
Oh, I
adding
see what you're saying.
225
That-
a year.
Yeah. he's
Okay.
Adding the 220.
So he's not using any of the 225 in
Not for
17.
this year's request for the
Right.
engine.
So that other dollars, that 92,000 will come out of tax, be raised by taxes.
So-
Do you understand what I'm saying?
92,000 is not revenue, right?
I understand what you're saying. I just want to make sure that my line, the 121, because basically what I did was I took, the previous year's spreadsheets and made sure that the formulas correlated properly. So that line is actually reflecting line 48 across the board. And what I want to make sure is, if you're talking about the subtotal for fire vehicle revenues, line 48, is that not correct as well? Do I need to?
Based on assumption.
Yeah, but I'm looking at, if you look at 122, you see below it says 381,
Right, and it's confusing because like you said,
because it's,
and then when you go all the way to the end of the spreadsheet,
Yeah.
it just compounds the problem. So
Right.
I just want to make sure that I'm doing it properly, so.
I think if we have John start changing this, we're gonna get even more confused than we already are.
But
But
do
I
you count
think we
a
got-
tax appropriation as a revenue? I don't think so.
Right.
No, I agree with that, Ray.
So-
And the other thing, I mean, it looks weird because we're looking at $660,000 of expenditure with $885,000 worth of revenue, leaving if you will, a positive fund balance of $225,000, which may well not be the case.
I agree. I think we need to get, maybe you could meet with Sue on that.
Okay.
If that's okay with you, just to go look at the numbers. just-
Yeah.
'Cause that confuses me, and I'll make sure I discuss it with her too on Monday.
And I'll tell you what, we'll accept the wisdom of John, Sue, and yourself if you're gonna go after it and square it all away and
That's-
supply us
that's
with
conf-
numbers.
That's confusing.
Because this
to
is
me.
something we don't change.
Right.
This is just sort of a culmination of all the revenues and, you know,
You
But
know,
again, for consistency's sake, it would be, I read this as the fire department actually counting a tax appropriation as a revenue dollar, where none of the other departments do.
yeah, I agree with you, Ray. I don't believe the 92,000 should show in here as a revenue.
no, I don't either. to be
No.
honest with you.
225 is a hope and a,
So line 45, that shows 92,000 as a revenue.
I mean, it's correct in that it is additional funds required for the purchase of apparatus,
but it's not a revenue.
but it's not a revenue.
So that line should
So
really
so
go away.
it shouldn't be added in for line 48 purposes.
No. And then it shouldn't transfer down to line 121 either.
Right.
So we're gonna let the powers to be look at this for us, so we can,
Powers that think they be.
no, they'll be. And we'll
No
work off of that.
guarantees. Okay, sorry about that.
No, I
Good point.
think
Well,
it's
I
great.
agree with
It's a
you.
good catch.
I
Rick.
spent an hour with John earlier today.
Mike can stop squirming in his chair now.
No, I called John earlier because I was still having trouble with it, and even when I got done talking to him, I was struggling, so this has
Sometimes you
been
get
helpful
more
to me.
confused when you're done talking, Mike.
What's that? Oh, I'm always
Sometimes it's more
confused, it's
confusing when
easily
it's done.
confused.
Okay, so is it okay to move on to the capital projects on page 4? So we started to talk about the police department for a generator at the radio hut at the summit for $25,000 and a police department parking lot expansion. I'm pretty certain most of the Homeland Security grants are gone for generators and such, so I don't see any grant application in the memo.
So funding source, should that be tax appropriation as well then, most likely?
It definitely is tax appropriation, because there's nothing in the line for funding source. Parking lot expansion, the number is 107,283. I'm assuming that the Public Works, as they generally do, are gonna help with it. I don't believe the asphalt is gonna cost them $107,000 for that parking lot, but I'm gonna rely on the chief's numbers, and I'm certain it's never gonna reach that threshold for the parking lot expansion. I hope it doesn't. That's a lot of money for parking lot expansion. And he's got it as a 3 anyway. He's got it
Yeah.
as a desirable, not,
Let's leave that one to the Budget Committee and the Selectmen to figure out.
okay. Anything else on the police departments? And the priorities being a 3 and a 2. So the radio at the generator at the hut must not be broken down. It must be just a replacement on a schedule to make sure they have the power they need when they need it.
Yeah.
We move on to the fire capital projects. They have 1, 2, a thermal imaging camera. They've taken and put all 4 of them into one. This is where I have a little problem with our threshold stuff, because this does not meet the $25,000 threshold, and it is not a rolling stock, and I'm just, this is a slippery slope for me when we put 4 cameras together to come up with $45,000. These are the kind of things that should be budgetary, in my opinion. If it's $12,000 a camera or $11,000 a camera, these should be in their budget. They should not be in CIP. And the cardiac monitor defibrillators, I see a plural. I don't know how many that is.
Doesn't matter because it's EMS funded.
It is, no tax, EMS.
Yeah, no tax impact.
All right, so I'm going to circle, for my discussion purposes, 140. Anybody else have any discussion on the fire department's capital projects?
Do we want to put a priority number for the defibrillators?
Yes,
It's 2 necessary on his sheet. I did not put that.
Two?
on there.
Okay. Thank you, John.
No problem.
any discussion?
Yeah, just a comment, again, for consistency's sake. There's a bond involved with the fire station over on Church Street.
Yep.
Debt schedule is not included in this matrix. I noticed that the school district submittal does include debt schedule payments. And again, it's a case of being consistent.
Yeah.
Do we want to carry debt as part of the capital process, project listing? It is a significant expense.
Historically, we have, Ray, and the reason behind that, I think, is that it is a capital project, and this is an expense associated with it. The counter argument, of course, is that once we're into the bonding cycle, we're into the bonding cycle. And that cannot be changed. Those payments have got to be made. So it really ought not be in CIP, because CIP is subject to, I'm going to use the word review, by the planning board, by the selectmen, and by the budget committee, and that is not something that they really have any control over at all.
And if I may, Earl, I think it should be in there, because when a department comes back for another bond article, for another station renovation or something, we have a handle on what our current debt situation is prior, for any future debt that we may decide we want
Yeah,
to
like I say,
send forward.
we can argue this one either way.
It's already in there. I mean, it's a bill's a bill. I mean, the town's already voted for it. We've already signed the bond payment, I mean, it's there. So, I mean, I don't understand why you want to keep carrying it in CIP. I understand you're thinking you can look at everybody's bills, but, you know, we just finished off one of the school ones, right? Or 2 of them in the last couple of years? I thought we finished off.
No, we're still alive. We're still alive on those.
I
And
thought
we'll be in
Mountain View was-
2021.
Mountain View is 2021?
The Goffstown High School is Mountain View finished off probably about, 5 or 6
Yeah,
years ago.
5 or 6 years ago.
So for Ray's consistency question, we either have to decide that we want them in there, or we don't want them, and the school does not have to continue to submit the bond schedule payments. One or the other.
Well, I think that when you originally set up your bond, when you originally set up the project or request, you get that information, but after the CIP has approved that, then it moves on. You see what I'm saying? We've already approved the fire department's already been approved. It's already gone through the voters, it's already approved. You would have had that bond payment schedule.
So you're saying that becomes part of the operating budget and it's a mandatory payment?
Right,
I
because
understand
have an
that
option,
argument.
Yeah, because there's absolutely nothing you can do about it.
Yeah,
Right.
once you,
But on the other hand, I'll argue,
Like
it's
I- like-
nice to see what you did.
Like I say, it can be
And I
argued
agree
either
with you,
way.
Ray.
yeah.
I
Mike?
think it's nice to see it from a couple perspectives. The one that you brought up, Tim, is a good one. We're gonna start another fire station here in 3 or 4 years ostensibly, and we're still paying a bond on the first one. It's gonna be the request, according to what's in the matrix. We ought to be knowing that and having that in front of us in some fashion. Not that we can say, do something about it, but it
Well, let
really
me
goes
ask you
into
this.
how much
So if
food do you
we're,
wanna put on when you're gonna.
if we're gonna get these other
taxpayer-
requests in the future, Mike, maybe we could request that any department head that's requesting another bond that has an outstanding bond on the table would supply us with the information at the time. This is what my debt schedule is for this station. We have 17 years left, and it's so many $1,000s a year, and I'm asking for another bond for another project. At that point, we would have the information on our status without muddying up the matrix with it.
Yeah.
That work?
That's not a bad way to go, Tim. I guess what I struggle with, and I'm still struggling with, is trying to see, when we're making these decisions along the way, what's the impact on the taxpayer? To say, is this gonna be reasonable when we get all said and done? Not just with a given bond, but what's the whole package looking like?
Right.
And how does it compare to where we are today? What are we adding, subtracting, or whatever? That's very helpful to me in making budget type of decisions, but
Peter?
Okay, I understand what Mike, what you're asking. You have that information already. When you're doing your budget, the budget reports have that information on it. That's your debt schedule. It's in your expense reports every month that you get.
it's in the
That-
expense reports. I
That's
agree.
there. So when you're looking at a new project, that new project is gonna come in and say, this $1 million is gonna add this much to your tax rate. Because you're already paying on the other one. So it doesn't matter, I mean, if you wanna think about, well, you're gonna compounding and all the bonds and have numerous bonds, that's always gonna happen. The schools could have 2 or 3 at the same time, and it's just the way it is.
Earl?
Well, for our purposes then, I guess we really need to make a decision. Do we include it or do we not include it? And that would not just be for fire, but I think it would affect how.
The school.
The school board, how Ray prepares his stuff for Brian to present to us.
Well, I'm inclined to say that we do not include it in the matrix, but we ask for a department head that's going to propose a new bond to provide information to us on any outstanding bonds and costs associated with those bonds at the time of the submission. Does that meet the criteria, Earl?
Current
I think so.
outstanding bonds. Any current outstanding bonds.
Thank you. I mean, we're gonna be looking at library expansion probably one of these days. We talked about a bond for $2 million for a swimming pool. I mean, these bonds are all gonna be floating out there one of these days,
Right,
if
we
they
also-
all
we-
pass.
Yeah, we also talked about capital reserving
Well,
the swimming pool.
good luck with that. Okay.
It was a thought.
It's a great thought, but it's not gonna happen. I'm sorry. I doubt if it's gonna happen. Ray, do you have something else?
No, no, we're good.
All right, so, the thermal imaging camera, line 140, and the cardiac monitor, line 142. Okay, Public Works,
We,
Ray?
no, I'm just, again, it's an EMS-funded item on
Yes.
142.
No tax impact.
Do we still want to assign a priority?
Yes,
Probably not.
because it's on a sheet that John forgot to transpose onto the,
It was 2 necessary.
onto
Okay,
the matrix.
Okay, fine, sorry.
It was an impact, it was a priority too. Okay, the Public Works has several projects on the list this year, beginning with the road plan, which everybody supports as a rule. West Lawn Cemetery expansion. Does the cemetery expansion money come from any of their funds, or is it a tax appropriation, Earl?
Tax appropriation. For whatever reason, cemetery funds, purchase of lots and so on, goes into the general fund.
I brought that up at the last meeting.
Right, in order for it to go into a special cemetery account, it would have to be a town vote.
Well, it might be a good idea, because remember when they proposed West Lawn 2? They said there was $1 million or $900,000 worth of graves across the street. It'd be nice if that money took care of the cemeteries.
Indeed, it
in-
would.
in and of itself.
And I'm gonna ask this question to Peter, and you may well answer it, I don't know, and that's okay, because it wouldn't surprise me. But the cemetery trustees have come to the town trustees on a number of occasions, asking for release of funds from what are shown as unknown cemetery funds, both primarily in the perpetual care column. And there is well over $100,000 in accrued interest out there. We told the cemetery trustees on a number of occasions that we as trustees don't have the authority to do that, that they've got to go the Cypre route through the probate court and the AG's office and town council. Do you know if that has gone anywhere at all?
Last time I heard, we talked about this before, and I thought there was some legislation on it, being proposed on it, and also, you're right, there's nothing we can't touch the perpetual care funds. We can't, that's only for,
Right, and if it shows unknown perpetual care fund, what, and I've got no problem if the cemetery trustees go through town council and the selectmen and present a Cypre petition to be able to use the money, the interest money, in the unknown funds for some particular maintenance purpose. I don't have a problem with that, but that's the route they gotta go.
yeah, the problem with Cypre is that the amount of the expense to do the investigating on every one of those, and that's what you would have to do, they'd have to be all,
Correct.
done separately to investigate them would be extensive, from what I understand of my last conversation, unless something's changed that I don't know about. But,
How is this germane to our discussion at this point?
well, because he's looking at
I understand.
spending the money from those accounts.
It's not, we can't do it this year, so I don't know if we should waste a lot of time on it.
No, we shouldn't waste, I was just curious as to, you know,
No, I understand, we've discussed it, and like you say, Cypre is a tough way to go, and it's,
but it's the only way to go.
So if it costs X to do Cypre this year, it could be X plus 10% next year, so they probably should do it and get it over with.
it might be cost prohibitive to do. It's
Well, you know what?
unbelievable work
Otherwise,
that
you're never gonna
involves
use it.
Each and every individual plot has to be investigated.
You know, each and every individual unknown trust has to be
Exactly,
investigated.
in an unknown trust plot or whatever, yeah, so you'd have to investigate that, somebody would have to go through that and spend the money, the legal fees to do that.
I know, I believe Terry Knowles told me that another town, I don't remember which one, did it not too very many years ago for essentially the same thing. And so the investigation part is tough. Cloning the legal work would be no big deal for Drescher's office to do, assuming it's gonna go to Drescher's office.
I'd like to call this discussion right now, and let's move on.
Okay.
We're not going to resolve anything with it
Nope,
tonight,
not
so we're not
tonight.
going to discuss it tonight. So let's get back to Public Works. We're going to bypass West Lawn Cemetery, go straight down.
Are we coming
Uncon-
back to the cemetery or no?
No, unless you have a discussion that's
What, a
relevant.
different discussion in this one.
Please, then go ahead.
I'm wondering, the reasoning for doing what we've been doing with the three-phase part of this is to provide more plots,
Yes.
because we're running short on the existing cemetery. I'm just trying to understand why we would do landscaping for another year and then do plots. It would seem to me, we put the fence up, good move, that's being done this year. Wouldn't we do plots next, so that we got plots available?
It's their plan, as they discussed at the last meeting, Mike, they figure they have at least another year left in the plot of space available across the street, and they don't see the need to vary from their plan was to get the thing ready, do the plots, and then,
Here's my other wrinkle here, because as I brought up at the last meeting, I don't see us planting a lot of trees here that are gonna have roots that are gonna interfere and take away plots.
I would assume they're gonna plant the trees on the outside of the fence. I
I
doubt
haven't
if they're
seen
planting
anything
them
from
with.
them yet, just.
Have you ever seen the plan for the cemetery over there?
No,
It's like a jigsaw puzzle over there. There's not a lot of room for trees to be planted within the cemetery proper. I assume landscaping is gonna be outside the fence, Mike.
I guess I'm just proposing, would it be smart to flip that?
But the fencing is a necessity to
Fencing
open
is
the
done,
cemetery.
that's this year, that's 16, right?
Yep.
They
Fencing-
Contract was just let, yeah.
They can't open the cemetery unless it's fenced. I think that's the
Right,
state
no,
law. So they have to do the
Fencing is
fencing.
already decided and it's budgeted for this year, 2016. Next, the one we're talking about now is doing landscaping and then wait another year to
Well,
do plots. I'm
I'm-
just suggesting it makes more sense to me, but
A point of order, I don't think that's our job. I mean,
No,
see,
I was getting to that, Peter.
And,
think
you know,
this-
and is the
this term-
fencing to keep people in or keep people out?
Just so it looks finished, I guess, yeah, to keep
Okay.
fence. All right. Mike, you're welcome to attend a cemetery trustee meeting and bring that to their attention.
doesn't sound like it would change anything, so I'm good.
All right, so let's, Uncanonic Dam repairs was explained, they moved it out this year because they're waiting for a FEMA grant. It'd be nice if they got their FEMA grant, which generally is 75%.
Hopefully.
We have Terrell Hill Road Bridge Deck Replacement, the engineering costs are $92,000. We have Henry Bridge Replacement, and that once again is engineering costs for this year. And the Bog Road Bridge Deck repairs, I believe are actual repairs. No, there are more engineering involved, because they
Yeah.
show 115 in 2019.
I thought Terrell Hill was a repair, engineering and repair, or replacement.
Yes, but they're waiting for a FEMA grant,
Terrell Hill.
yes.
Yeah, that's why we've got that
So we have-
480 a year out.
So we have 3 requests for engineering and 1 for an actual bridge deck repair. They're all number 2s. I don't think we should mess with these. I think the Budget Committee will vet these through the Public Works and the Select Board, and I think they'll make the proper decisions based on the immediate needs.
The Public Works project revenues, line 167 and 168.
Yes.
Is that impact fees, or what is it?
I don't have a note to that effect. Well, it's actually line 167, because the other one's a sub.
Yeah.
John, could you check with Public Works prior to our final, it's not gonna matter to us where they're getting from, we just would like to know what the $114,000 revenue is.
I will ask him to clarify.
Line 167. I assume it's an impact fee.
Yeah,
not knowing.
that's my guess, but I don't know.
Was it on the submission sheet, Earl? Did you look?
I did not look, because I was not, I just got the.
No, they're not on the submission sheet that I can readily see. All right, well, let's let,
Hold on a second here. Terrell Hill Road Bridge Deck replacement, other offsetting revenue,
That's it.
$74,000. What does it say? Doesn't say where it's coming from.
so we still need clarification
All
on
right,
that
here we
line.
go.
I'll ask
I
him
think
to
this is, I think here we go. No state aid is anticipated to offset construction costs, but reimbursement for 80% of design funds is possible if the project is accepted by NHDOT.
Well, once again, we can't show
Maybe.
the possibility of a DOT acceptance as an actual revenue.
I'll ask Adam to clarify.
And he's got the same thing with the
Well, he
Henry.
said it at the last meeting. He said he was looking for bridge design fees to be reimbursed by the state,
Yeah.
even though the bridge itself would not be any,
Mhm.
follow for the reimbursement.
Yeah, he's got that, I think, both for Terrell Hill and for Henry Bridge.
All right. What are we doing on public works? Capital projects right now. Are we ready to move
I
on?
think we're good.
Okay, then we'll move on to the Sewer Commission, which is an enterprise fund. They show their plan for the next few years on how they're gonna utilize their revenues, which I think is commendable. They've always came in the past. I remember Jim Bouchard was always very interesting to listen to. He always had quite a list of things going on, and he was well-spoken, so. So the library is our actual next tax impact, which begins at line 187. And 17, I see zeros. No, I don't, 256 over here.
Mhm.
I'm on the wrong line. And that is for architectural and engineering costs for the library expansion. I was not here for the library discussion, I missed that meeting.
They actually came in this year with a very, very good presentation, at least my opinion of it. They were much more detailed and thorough than they had been in prior years. And I just got the addendum to it tonight. I took a quick look at it before the meeting. I guess you guys had that last week. To say just, pretty much what they are doing.
And they show 108,000 of library trust funds for an offsetting revenue for a total request of 148 for the engineering. Am I reading that correctly, Earl?
Yeah, it appears that way, yes.
So I don't think we should have anything to deal with this. I think it speaks for itself.
So, can I ask a question?
Please,
So
please.
you're agreeing with the expansion plan of $3,225,000?
I'm not agreeing with any plan. I'm agreeing with the request for funds to design something. That's a placeholder, Peter. I don't know that they've actually researched that number. Is that a good number, Earl?
Based on what they told us, that they were working with, that was the architect's name, Gary,
Doesn't matter. Whatever.
anyway, they said that was based on the information that they got from a member of their board who was the architect who has helped them in the past.
As far as I'm concerned, it's a placeholder, Peter. They may go into the design phase and find out they can't afford what they want. It's part of what the design is all about. You work something out that they're gonna present to the town. I'm not getting on the school board. The school board uses their money to design school buildings, and that's what they figure out. They gotta figure out what they're gonna do with it, and in some cases, they build it, in some cases, they don't.
So we had asked the library last year.
So that plan that came in last year, didn't have any plan.
Exactly.
Didn't
We
have
said-
any
we
plans
said,
at all.
come in, give us something that you can back up with some kind of hard numbers. And Diane did that this year.
And they have $108,000 of their own money they're willing to put up, so they must have some serious nature, or they wouldn't be putting $108,000 of their own money into the trust fund.
So let's overanalyze this again.
Okay, right?
We have a $3,225,000 project in 2018, which will be bonded. Should that not be counted as a revenue, the bond?
No,
Why not?
because it hasn't happened yet.
Again,
Hasn't
we're
been
trying to
approved.
take a look at a projected matrix here, Tim, and I probably argue that it is. We want to see what we're doing as far as debt loading or capital loading in the future. If this project goes, it will be bonded.
I don't know, I never understood how anybody could say that a bond that hasn't happened yet is a revenue. A revenue is what you have it in your pocket or in the bank. It's not a revenue until it actually exists, in my book, and I'm only one opinion.
We look at a project such as this one, which is dependent upon bonding. If bonding isn't secured, then obviously the project doesn't go forward.
Absolutely.
If it does, it's a net zero effect in both cases. But indeed, if we are going to be incurring a $3.2 million cost, there will be an offsetting revenue. Again, it's one of these that we can overanalyze, Tim, but
What was your suggestion, Ray?
again, to include it as a potential revenue.
Right.
But again, for consistency through all of the, we were looking at capital reserve fund applications for the fire department, and we all agreed, and I'm one of them, that we can't presume that $225,000 is gonna become available year after year. So I see what your argument is, Tim, but
And this is a proposal too, so we have no idea what it's gonna be in the out years,
Right.
even if it's passed, because we don't know a year from now or a year and a half from now, when that bond is actually signed, what the interest rate is gonna be and what the term of the bond is gonna be. Is it gonna be 10 years, 20 years? We don't know.
We also got to remember, too, that we're not signing the checks at CIP. We're just passing requests on with considering tax impacts over a 7-year matrix. Our job is to pass stuff along to the next level, and that's the Budget Committee and the Board of Selectmen, and ultimately the taxpayers.
But can I say something? In Ray's, I understand what Ray's saying. It's not going to be, that expense is not going to be $3,225,000 in that particular year. It's going to be a bond payment, not $3 million. So when you're looking at the bottom line, it's not $3 million. It's $250,000 or whatever the bond is.
Spread over the 10 or 20
Go to
years.
line 293, and that's a sum total of all of the project costs that are being proposed.
293.
Okay, so if we look at 293, it would say there's $6.6 million worth of proposed spending
In
for
18.
2018.
Yep.
Which really isn't the case.
Again, we're overanalyzing, I think, here.
It is the case, though, Earl, because you're committing to a long-term debt service on a $3 million project, which
Correct,
makes
correct.
the bottom line reflect that number.
But you're not,
That's not an annual expenditure, though.
Right.
That's the smoke and mirrors.
That request, it's a request, but when you're going for a request, you're going for the request for the amount of the bond payment, not for that $3 million in that 1 year.
What the citizens will argue is we want to know what the total is for the combined annual payments, what's it gonna cost us in the end? That's why that number shows up.
Okay.
Your point's well taken, Ray. I agree with your point. We
No,
have
I-
to get it all squared away, but consistency is the answer. I agree. There is another option. We pass it on to another CIP committee and let them handle it next year.
So this would be most of us anyway.
Remains to be seen.
Same place next year, yeah.
All right, Ray, so, are we good with the, completion of the library portion of the matrix on the capital improvement project, capital project?
For this year, yeah.
Yes.
So we move down to administration, planning, HDC, and conservation. Seems that the only two requests are from, administration.
I got a question on 205.
Yes.
Is that
Striking
going to be a
it
capital reserve fund, or is that going to be an actual expenditure?
is not going to be capital reserve
An
fund.
actual expenditure?
And that's a tax appropriation.
Right.
I've marked that to correct it.
So take the word
Capital reserve.
2017 master plan project.
Yep.
That's what so get rid of the first four words in the sentence.
Got it.
Anybody have any comments on admin?
Nope.
Here we are with our consistency, Ray. You go to line 211, and we're showing 95,000 as a revenue to pay for the projects. I think we have some work to do on our,
No, we're showing,
No, we're showing
After
zero.
revenues.
after revenues. We're showing no revenue.
after revenues. That's a good
Right.
one. Now, that differs what we've had in the past, isn't it? The wording, after revenues. No, it
No,
doesn't.
it's considered, no, John's consistent throughout this.
All right, we get on to the Parks Department.
Parks and Rec.
17, the Barnard Perry Sports Complex is a long-range request. They want to start with the impact fees. We had a long discussion about this with Parks and Rec. I did most of the discussing. I don't think they should rely on the Public Works Department to have the spare time to finish the ball fields for them, because it could be a 5-year plan to get the ball fields done. I think if the people in Goffstown want the sports complex, he should ask for a bond or a full amount to do it, get it over with, and be done with it, instead of the Public Works. If you look at what's going on with Public Works, they have got projects everywhere besides the roads. They've got a parking lot expansion for the police in here. There's a parking lot repairs at the town hall at some point coming up. We have other departments wanting help with things, and it's just like the parks. They need to stick to the roads. So if the taxpayers in town want a park, they should pay for it and get it over with. Unless they're willing to do the 10-year plan and wait for the highway department to have enough time to finish it. So they want two items. They want the Roy Park revitalization Phase 2 and the sports complex money to get started.
I mean, the Roy Park revitalization Phase 2, I think, is certainly, I'm not sure if it's a one, but it's definitely needed.
How is the Perry Barn design? I don't,
I'm not sure about that either.
Yeah, I think that's a little high, a little bit of an urgent,
I mean,
maybe it's a 2?
Making a motion for it too, Peter?
I'm just saying, I don't know if that's a one. I mean, is it dire need? Are we, something gonna, a crisis gonna occur?
Well, that's it. I mean, is Roy Park revitalization as important as a piece of fire apparatus?
Well, in the Parks and Rec's eyes, you know, they look at things a little bit different,
Of course.
you know. But that revitalization has already started at Roy Park, so I guess it'd be kind of a one now if you started something, you know, to finish it. You can't leave a project that's not, so that would be a one. Perry Barnett is a different thing, though. That's a long-term, long-range program. I don't know if that's a one. We don't have it now. Is it dire need? Is something gonna happen that if we don't, if that doesn't go ahead tomorrow? I'm just not sure if it's a one.
I'd have to agree with you. I mean,
Make a motion, Peter, and we'll do something.
Yeah, actually, may I chime in on that just for
Go for it.
one quick second? For the Barnard Perry Sports Complex, they are using impact fees, which do have a date which they need to be used by,
And that is,
the 41,300.
when does it have to be used by?
I believe it needs to be used by the end of, well, it depends on which ones. They took a lump of them, and they were all coming up rather quickly. So
Okay.
we thought it best
And I
to.
believe that was the.
Yeah, I think that was,
part of
I think
his
that was the
presentation.
rationale.
Right.
You know, it's a, you
So
know,
it's a one for the funding, not necessarily for the project.
Right.
Right.
I'm concerned that it continues on as a one in the future when we're not dealing with that either then.
Well, let's make a motion to change the,
No, let's leave it then. If we gotta use the monies,
yeah.
that it is important. That is,
or give it back within 7 years.
Which you don't want to do.
No,
stop your hand.
no, I don't want to give it back. I think we should use it for the town's purpose. John, I went looking for the Public Works water line extension to the DPW and athletic fields.
$57,000.
I went to my worksheets, though. It's only 35,000 in submission sheets in our book, and I wonder why there's a change in the numbers. Unless I'm not reading it correctly in my submission sheet.
Where are you on the matrix?
We are on line
164.
164.
Oh, okay.
I backtracked a little bit because I was thinking about that water line thing when we were talking about the park department.
Yeah.
Because the park's ultimately going to be part of that if that water line goes down into the ball fields.
I have 57,000 for 2018, and their submission sheet, I've got 57,000 as well.
How much?
57,000.
Well, why does my sheet say 35?
Do you have two? He sent an updated version.
Oh, do you send an updated sheet?
Mhm.
Getting a leg cramp. Can't stand it. Squirm around here a little for a second. Stand up more. Excuse me.
Go for a walk.
I just gotta stand up. All right, so that's a good number then, John?
Yes.
All right, then, my mistake. I'm not standing up for a minute. All right, then, so I digressed back, so let's go back to where we were. Or would you just take over for a second? I'm gonna
Yeah.
walk this off.
All right. Okay, we were looking at Parks and Rec. We've got lines 214, 215, and that brings us over to top of page 6. Subtotal Parks and Rec projects, less the impact fees, $30,000 cost for taxpayers. I think we've probably exhausted the comments on either and or both of those. So let's move on to the school projects, starting on line 234. So for 2017, the first thing we see is under Maple Ave, another portable classroom for $110,000. And Ray, is that, says estimated project cost to recondition and install a used unit. Is that a purchase? I know in the past we've leased some of these things.
No, this is an actual purchase, renovation, and installation of a used unit. There's some recent activity where the school district actually benefited from a donated unit from the Amherst
Yeah, I remember
school
getting that.
district. And that unit came in at no cost. And we did end up spending almost $100,000 in renovation and installation costs. The renovation cost being a good chunk of it being associated with code, and having that unit brought up to current code.
Okay, so
So
that's a valid number.
it is a valid number.
Okay.
And it too is looking at impact fees that the school district has on its plate. And again, they are time sensitive.
All right, and we're showing that, those impact fees on line 285
Right.
to the tune of $80,000. Okay. There's nothing coming up this year at Bartlett, and that's the only one for Maple Ave.
Right.
All right, now we're gonna go up to Mountain View, go to the top of page 7. And it looks like the only item there is the surface road reclamation and striping.
Right.
Is there grant money, you said appropriation and grant, is there grant money coming in there somewhere?
No, there is a grant application that is in process. Again, referring back to earlier discussion this evening, there's no promise that that's going to become available. The project will proceed if the grant does become available. That's a condition.
Okay, so in other words, no grant money,
No
no
project.
road reclamation.
Right.
All right, and I don't see anything on there for offsetting revenues, which is good because we're not assuming anything.
We
Not-
perhaps, if you look at line 286,
Well, there it is,
we
okay.
did combine
We combined it.
FEMA grants with other projects that are being scheduled.
All right.
So it'd be the service road and some generators.
Gotcha, okay. All right, and then for the high school, we got the bond payment on line 263.
Right, 263 should be struck, and that's per
Discussion
earlier
tonight.
discussion this
Discussion
evening.
tonight.
So this will be a modification to the school district's matrix.
So line through, just for now.
Should be removed.
Removed, because we're taking the bond payments out.
That was 263, correct?
Correct.
263. And then we go to the generator on line 265.
That total project is $180,000. It again assumes a FEMA grant, which, this is primarily associated with the emergency management director and, for that matter, the police department are supporting the move of the community shelter from Mountain View Middle School to Goffstown High School.
And I think that's, seems for two reasons. One, I think, is more space, but I think the more important one is access and egress, because Mountain View, there's only one way in and out, whereas for the high school, you can get in either from Wallace Road or Mass Road.
Correct. Yep. And again, that is a total project cost, the $180,000, and we're assuming a 50/50 match.
Is that project gonna be also dependent on grant money, or that's gonna
That's
go?
correct.
So no grant, things stay as they are?
Again, yes, I'm gonna say yes at this point, however, that can always change after discussion with the town as to how we might be able to address that expense.
All right, and then we've got the drainage project for $490,000.
Right.
I know you've had two floods there that I can recall over the last, I don't know, 10 years perhaps.
Started in 2006 with the Mother's Day flood. 2 years later, there was another flooding issue. The gymnasium floor has had to been replaced with both of those instances, as well as a lot of, sheetrock replacement and that sort of thing that became wet. The drainage project is we currently have the engineering and design under contract with Stantec Consultants. We expect a design and bid documents to become available probably before the end of the summer. The plan is to go out to bid for that project towards the winter time. That's the advice that we're getting, that we expect a more beneficial response to the school district. Construction companies will be looking for, again, participation. Funding on this, again, is going to be grant dependent. We are feeling more comfortable with securing FEMA grants for the drainage remediation project because it comes out of a different pot of money than the generators would, if you will. So this one is likely to go forward.
Again, you know, what's kind of ironic here is if we had another flood and needed the high school as an emergency shelter, but the high school was flooded.
Right, right. And that's.
I mean, you know, worst case scenario, I can envision this.
Ray, is this going grant or no matter what?
It's a 75-25 split right now, Peter, and there's a pretty high confidence level that that's going to happen.
If it doesn't happen, are you still gonna do the project?
We get it.
I know you have to, that's what I was
Yeah,
asking, yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
because obviously, without saying, the school district is really taking a significant hit with respect to its property and liability insurance right now. And we can expect to pay premiums until we're able to remediate this issue.
Makes sense.
All right, so we're looking at $1.4 million for the high school. Now we're at Glen Lake.
But part of that $1.4 million is offset with grants.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
That's a big,
District-wide, looking at line 276, the Honeywell Phase 2 building performance upgrade. Again,
It should be struck.
that's what I was gonna say. Should we take that one out?
Yes, 276 also should be removed.
276 gone, right?
Ray, just off the top of your head, I know in prior years you've said to us that this is actually really significantly offset by energy cost savings. Is that still?
That is still the case, yes. That is still the case. It's cost avoidance is perhaps the best way to describe that. Had the project not been incorporated, we would be spending at least $165,000 a year more for heating oil, electricity, and propane. So the avoidance is what's covering this lease purchase agreement at this point. The monies are still there, they are still part of the operating budget, but instead of sending it off to the heating oil company, we're paying ourselves back for this investment.
All right, taking a quick look at the project revenues.
So line
282.
282 should be struck.
And what about 283? Bartlett Building 8, Phase 1.
Again, that's a revenue that we're enjoying. Yeah, we should cut it. We should cut it.
So eliminate 283 as well.
Associated with a, yeah. It's associated with a debt.
83.
And 276, right?
Yeah. Those are those, the ongoing payments that we decided really ought not be in here.
That's fine.
We've got impact fees from Maple Ave, and of course, we've got the assumptions on the drainage and generator grants.
Okay.
All right, any comments on anything regarding the schools?
Would we like to keep the priorities the same as they've been proposed?
Let's take a look at those.
Don't have anything, so.
Let's go back to page 6.
Earl, 286, that's Mountain View, right? That's that And then 287's the drainage project.
Right.
Okay.
Well, 286 is Mountain View and the high school generator,
Oh, generator, right, I'm just, but that's the,
both of them.
right.
All right. So,
6, we on?
so we're going back to look at the priorities. 243, the portable classroom at Maple Ave.
That's a 2.
That's a 2. I think that probably is appropriate. I mean, you could, if it didn't happen, you can work around it, at least short term.
Correct.
253 for Mountain View, the road reclamation and striping. That, again, you said is grant dependent,
Mhm.
so I'm wondering if that should be a 2 or a 3. I guess you feel it's necessary.
If it be, the,
I hate to put you on, I hate to put you on the spot.
no,
You know, we might be able to put Christie on the spot instead.
the project here, again, is, there's a reclamation of the actual asphalt right now, but if you do take a look at the roadbed, the shoulders, they're beginning to erode. You all recall the pitch of that drive going up to the school building. They've not been addressed regularly, as far as maintenance goes now, for the past, 7 or 8 years. And they are beginning to suffer. If we don't do any work there, it's going to be a significant cost impact in the future when we have to reclaim the entire structure.
Are you looking at this as a DPW project or contract out?
Contract out.
DPW wouldn't do the road reclamation, I don't think that would be contracted out.
Well, they do road reclamation.
Yeah, but they
that's-
hire a contractor to reclaim the road.
Yeah, you have a machine that comes in and
Yeah.
does the reclaim, and it's not something that DPW does.
Okay, so it's contract out, all right. Let's see. 263. Are we eliminating that line?
Removing it.
Moving that line, okay. And the emergency generator installation, I agree that should be a 1, particularly if we are looking at transferring the emergency shelter
Up there.
up there. And the drainage project, I think, probably ought to be a 1 as well. For one thing, you've got the,
It doesn't identify which school, or does it?
yeah, it does. We're at Goffstown High School now.
There's actually drainage projects underway at both schools, the middle school and the high school. The school district has been able to fund the work going on at the middle school, utilizing funds that they've received from Health Trust and local government centers' refund of surplus premiums over the past several years. So it was a repurposing of those monies, and we were able to address that large-scale project using the refunds we've received from those folks. The drainage project at Goffstown High School is much bigger, and we don't have sufficient funding on hand to cover the entire project, and that's why there is a grant associated with that. It's a 75-25 match on the grant, so we're looking for 75% of that project cost to be grant funded.
Yeah. I'm wondering-
25% of the project, which could include engineering and design work, which is in essence complete now, would be for the school district. So one might say that if the grant comes through, there will be no additional outlay of cost or cash from the school district.
What I'm wondering, Ray, and Christie as well, given the insurance issues, given the issue of transferring the emergency shelter from Mountain View to the high school, should this be a 1 or stay at a 2?
I think it should be at a 1, because we can't have the drainage issues and have the shelter moved to Goffstown High, it doesn't make sense to me.
Well, the drainage issues stopping the high school from being used.
It could.
Yeah, yeah.
If
But
we
there's
had,
also
if
snow
we
in
had
July,
a significant
Peter,
flooding disaster.
It's going to be used for emergency shelter. So what happens when it floods, both gyms flood. That's where the emergency shelter would be, at both gyms. So it's obvious that that's a 1. That particular point should be a 1. It's costing us money with an insurance company, making us pay a larger premium because it isn't,
Because we've had the
Safe.
flooding issues.
right, we've had flooding issues. So that should be, in cost savings, that should be a 1. So I don't see any reason why it's not a 1. I don't understand why somebody would.
so I'd like to move that we make a CIP priority a 1 on the drainage project.
Okay. Second. I'm not even sure we need to
Vote on it.
vote on it. It's consensus stuff.
Okay.
And, all right, that takes care of the priorities, at least for 2017.
We're not going to do priorities on the out years because they're not here yet. And I'm willing to remove my questions about the boat with the fire department. We'll leave that up to the budget. That's on line 26. I had that, sir.
So we're okay with that.
So were there any other questions, Tim?
I just still have line 140. I still have a problem with
The 4
grouping
cameras.
4 cameras for a CIP submission. I think they should be budgetary. They are things that wear out in the fire department as a part of their normal use, the same as a lot of other things do. But if this committee would like to let that move forward to the budget committee, we'd let it go. I just think we have to come up with some better definitions of what we accept and not accept for future.
Yeah, and again, I think it is, Tim, for future. I would say let it go and let the budget committee and the selectmen deal with it.
We will, but I think Tim's right. I don't think that belongs there. I think it's 4 cameras, it doesn't meet the threshold. Only reason, and the reason why I agree with that is if you were going to replace one trailer that was, or one item that was $2,000, would it be here? No. But if you decide to do all 4, then, yeah, then you know,
I'm just
You need
playing,
to-
I'm just playing devil's advocate.
Well, we do have a
Peter.
precedent.
all
though.
cameras go, did all those thermal cameras just all of a
No,
sudden
I
stop
just want to play
working?
devil's advocate for a moment. The same argument could be made for police and fire replacing sidearms, replacing radios, so on and so forth. That same argument could be made. They're an operating item which is used on a regular basis, and for each individual item, you're not looking at anywhere near the CIP threshold.
But in some of those cases, there are grants involved, and like with the weapons, they have a trade-in value. If you trade them all in, you get a deal on them. You upgrade all the same equipment, so everybody's got the same type of weapon. You're not dealing with different things.
And the same argument could be made with the thermal imaging cameras.
Well, we did set a precedent several years back with the computers for the school system because we actually rejected the computers because we felt that they did not have a 3-year or a 5-year lifespan because they are being replaced on such a fast schedule. And
Yeah.
the school board graciously accepted that, and we all moved on. We just have to come up with better definitions of what we're going to accept in the future. We should let it go for tonight and have a discussion with the planning board on what we are going to permit in the future.
Okay. And then we had a question on 167, which we're going to get an answer on.
Yes, the revenues.
Right.
We're going to find out if that is
Grant monies or
impact fee.
impact fees, grant monies, whatever.
Does anybody else have any other glaring errors, omissions within the matrix or other discussion items? Once again, I'd like to say that I think all the department heads came in and brought in their real needs, and they didn't muddle up the program with a lot of stuff that we were forced to work on. I don't see that we need to even slide anything out. Does anybody have any suggestions on moving anything into the outreach?
Not for this year.
make a motion?
That's what I was gonna ask for next.
I
Ask
have
for
a
a
motion that we go forward to the planning board with the current, what we have in front of us.
So the motion would be to forward the matrix with tonight's corrections and questions answered to the planning board for consideration.
Right.
Second that.
So that was Peter's motion, I just kind of tuned it up a little bit.
Exactly what I said.
Well, it makes it official. Okay, any discussion on the motion?
Well, that would certainly eliminate the next two meetings.
Well, that's sort of the,
I know that.
No kidding, Earl.
Here I am, obvious man.
if in fact something comes back here as a problem that John needs the committee to look at, we can reconvene for a very brief meeting, but if the questions get answered to John's satisfaction, I would be willing to allow John's administrative skills to pass that on to us, or prepare a final matrix to be submitted to the planning board. Any other?
Sounds good.
Did we
Any
vote
other
on it?
discussion?
Did we vote yet? No.
No, I was making sure the discussion was over. Any discussion? All those in favor of sending the amended matrix to the planning board, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? The chair votes in favor. Does anybody have any other business for this committee tonight?
According to Patty's email, they were gonna do the picture tonight?
Yes. Does John have a camera?
I can go grab it.
I think you better, because we're not coming back. Unless you just want to put all little,
Photoshop.
what do they call those things? Emojis in there with names under them.
That's a good idea. That might end up anyway.
You want a motion to adjourn?
Not yet.
Right.
Gotta do my thank you part. So before I accept a motion to adjourn, I'd like to thank everybody who took the time to come out here on their Thursday nights, beginning May the 19th. And now we are in July. Luckily, we have the month of August off. But I'd like to thank all the members of the different boards that came out here, school board, budget committee, select board, and I'd like to thank the community at large members who took the time to volunteer their services to come out tonight.
I assume we are still looking at the formal planning board presentation for...
September the 8th as scheduled. So I would invite any member of this committee that would like to attend the planning board meeting that night. It will be, we always convince the agenda to be arranged so that the matrix is presented first, even though we used to have a different group that always wanted to do it at the end because of, inconveniencing the applicants and making them wait. But I think that we are plenty inconvenienced as a committee on Thursday nights to come out here and give up our time. So I will make sure that we make every attempt to have our matrix presentation to the planning board first on the agenda on Thursday, September the 8th. And I will bring that up at the planning board meeting this coming Thursday night to recommend that it be permitted and that they can vote on it that night. Remind me if I forget.
Okay.
Okay, I'll accept a motion at this point.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Motion by Peter, seconded by Earl to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you very much.
Okay, let's see if you can talk.